Hello, Earthlings. Neutron Sound here, the internet's busiest needle drop ripoff. And it's time for a review of the new Tortoise album, The Catastrophist. This is Tortoise's seventh album, their fifth with their current lineup, and their first in 7 years. Basically, the intervals between their albums have been getting longer and longer because it was 2 years and then another 2 years, and three again, and 5, and now 7. This is also the first album that the band appear on, although each member basically contributes one body part to the picture on the cover. This is also their first album with actual live sung vocals, as opposed to the sort of processed vocals you had on Night Air, the vocoder on Monica, the synth vocals on the Lithium Stiffs. But they've brought in actual singers on this album to sing a couple tracks. Let's go! Track 1 is the title track, and it just hits you right from the start. Not in a Seneca way, but somewhat in a Seneca way, because unlike Seneca, it doesn't have a pickup. It's got a bit of a Jed flavor to it, quite a bit of a TNT flavor. It basically sounds like most of their openers, but I would say TNT and High Class Slim came floating in from their last album. Beacons of Ancestorship are probably its closest relatives. I think a few of the guitar arpeggios kind of reminded me of Charter Oak Foundation, the last song on Beacons of Ancestorship, which kind of acts as a nice bridge between the two albums, because you don't really hear the massive gaps between the album releases, I find with Tortoise. Track 2 is Ox Duke. Again, it's got a real Tortoise feel. It reminds me of some of my favorite tracks on TNT, and also some of my less favorite tracks on Beacons of Ancestorship. This one has a real It's All Around You vibe as well. Some of the hi-hat work on it reminds me a bit of the end of Unknown going into Dot Eyes. I like Ox Duke better than the Catastrophist so far. Track 3 is a cover of Rock On by David Essex, which has Todd Rittman from US Maple on vocals. I don't really know anything about US Maple. And the way Tortoise covers the song is great. It doesn't differ very much from the original, other than, of course, the difference between David Essex and Todd Rittman's voices. And also the fact that the drums make the occasional 7/8 measure more pronounced. Track 4 is a really short track called Gopher Island. It kind of reminds me of Eden 2 and Eden 1 from Standards and Penumbra from Beacons of Ancestorship, but that's mainly because of its length. I mean, they just sound like Tortoise interludes. Track 5 is Shake Hands with Danger. It's a nice, heavy track. It's got a real groove to it, some processed percussion sounds, and a guitar melody with some long notes. Yeah, it's just a great track. Track 6 is The Clearing Fills, easily my least favorite track on the album. Apart from the synth effects at the end that kind of give it a Tortoise signature, it could easily be mistaken for a Yo La Tengo instrumental, and it would definitely have benefited from someone from Yo La Tengo singing on it. Yes, I'm aware that one of them will later appear on the album, but I think they could have also used one of their voices on this track. It would have made it significantly better, in my opinion. Track 7 is Gasap. I just looked up how to pronounce that. It's another nice synth-heavy track reminiscent of the first bit of High Class Slim came floating in. It's the longest song on the album. It sounds like Tortoise. Not much to be said about that. Track 8 is Hot Coffee. This track and Shake Hands with Danger are the two real grooving tracks on the album. But especially Hot Coffee. It's got the slightly funkier groove, some nice guitar synth blends, texture things. A definite favorite. But my 3 absolute favorite tracks are the last 3. Yonder Blue has Georgia Hubley from Yo La Tengo on vocals, and it's the first real Tortoise song to actually have lyrics, apart from possibly some really early song that John Herndon sang, but maybe that was a cover. But this is definitely the first recorded original with lyrics. It's kind of weird that Georgia Hubley is the only woman in Yo La Tengo and she still has the lowest voice of the three. Either way, Yonder Blue is a wonderful song. It's one of those grooves that you can just swim in or just float in. It's got some nice old sounding drums, or filtered to make them sound old, and some excellent guitar playing, and George's voice just really blends well. I guess this might be YLT's way of saying thank you to Tortoise, since John McEntire produced their album Fade. I guess they're repaying them by having Georgia sing on a Tortoise song. I mean, that's clearly not the case, because I read it was Tortoise who sent this song to Georgia, and she just added her voice to it. But it's nice to see two drummers basically showing up on each other's albums. Tesseract is a great jazz fusion type song, and it's got some great guitar-bass chemistry between Jeff Parker and Doug McCombs, and possibly Dan Bitney. I don't know if he plays guitar on this track. But yeah, it's definitely a highlight of the album. And then we come to the closer, At Odds with Logic, which is an epic type 6/8 thing. I definitely think Dan plays guitar on this track, because there's some guitars answering each other, playing two melodies at once, which fit with each other. And again, your standard John McEntire synth makes its standard appearance and contributes to the swell of this track as it closes out the album, and it's a wonderful closer. So I would say this is a pretty good Tortoise album. It's not their best, but it's still better than their first two, in my opinion, because their first two didn't really do much for me. And that's it. Go forth and be awesome.